Listen, okay? I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. The council was very clear in its decision not to go public, and I brought it with them. The things happening here would not be believed. Actually, they should not be believed. Because to believe in these things, these events, would mean the very concept of our perception of reality is wrong. That kind of information can be dangerous in the wrong hands. I won't be responsible for mass public panic. I won't be responsible for this town going bankrupt. I do, however, have to tell somebody something. The weight of it is too much to bear it all on my own. Okay, so our town surrounds a lake. The lake is huge, so big that when you are in the middle of it, the surrounding landscape is but a flat edge on the horizon. There are virtually no islands, and it is deep, deeper than most lakes I've ever come across. The lake is also the single biggest contributor to our economy, mostly through tourism, fisheries, housing developments, and cottage rentals. I had been on the town's police force for a few years before the summer of 2013, and it was your typical picturesque small cottage town with only the occasional bar fight or break-in to deal with. There were only a handful of police officers to begin with because our town hadn't seen a murder in over 30 years until 2013. We were a haven, a place where people could and did feel safe. I can't give you many more details than that. I can't tell you where we are. I won't give you real names. We have covered these events up for good reasons. I hope. What I'm about to reveal to you are the notes of my personal observations occurring over the past few years. July 16, 2013. Several reports of an abandoned boat in the middle of the lake. We are sent to investigate because no one will go near it. Townspeople who observed the boat tell me they feel compelled not to go near it, as if they were being controlled against their will. Superstition runs rampant among these parts, so I shrug it off and chalk it up to creative excuses not to haul the thing in themselves. I take my partner in our police issue aluminum 10-footer to see who this boat belongs to. After about 10 minutes, we spot it, and I immediately sense something ominous. To be clear, the feeling is hard to describe in one word. It was comparable to when you're walking through the woods and you come into an unfamiliar territory. Your senses become heightened and you can almost taste the foreign nature of the land. It felt exactly like that out on the water, as if we had floated into an alien landscape. I no longer laughed to myself about what the townspeople had said as I cut the motor and glided towards the small wooden boat. My partner, who is usually intolerably talkative, went silent. No, that's not right. Everything was silent. The wind died. The water went still. The day that had been clear and sunny seemed to dull and darken quickly, like someone had pulled down a dimmer switch on the world. I used our oars to guide ourselves parallel to the abandoned vessel, reaching out with my hand to grab the side of the abandoned boat. As soon as I touched the railing, I felt a chill run up my body. I mean that quite literally. A cold sensation seemed to crawl onto my hand, and then up my arm, and into my chest. My partner started screaming frantically. He was panicked and terrified, beyond anything I had ever seen from a grown man. I decided to leave without the boat and get my partner back to the station immediately. Later that evening, when he had calmed down, he whispered to me that he had seen something when I touched the boat. He said it was a figure, a sack of meat and bones that rose out of the water in front of him. It had raised a skeletal arm and pointed at him, chattering exposed teeth together with a jawbone that flailed back and forth. He never came back to work after that, and I never found the boat again. July 27, 2013. Any town's worst nightmare. A visiting family of 4, a man and his wife, with 2 children, one 10-year-old boy and the other a 6-year-old girl. They rented a small fishing charter boat in the morning and headed out. A beautiful, clear day in the forecast. I got a call in the evening, a call I never want to hear. The charter had returned with only the mother on board. She was hysterical and covered in blood, muttering incomprehensibly. I arrived just after the ambulance, and I expected to find the woman beside herself with fear and panic. What I found was worse. In a way, she was calm, composed, and talking to the paramedics logically and sensibly. I asked her what happened, and she told me that during lunch she had been suddenly overwhelmed with a compulsion to pick up a bait knife on the deck and stab her husband and children to death. She proceeded to dump their bodies into the lake and return home. As the only licensed rescue diver within the department, I took my boat out and followed the woman's GPS coordinates from her vessel and dove down to where she said she had dumped the bodies. After 6 hours and over 3 dives, I was unable to recover any evidence. Later on that day, I watched in horror as the woman threw up her husband's finger on the police station floor. August 18, 2013. Over the last week, we had received many calls from different people claiming they had been hearing screams coming from the north side of the lake. Some said the scream sounded like a woman. Some said a man, and others said it was a child screaming. I had been staking out various locations over the past few nights in my car when all of a sudden I heard it. The unmistakable sound of someone screaming, not in pain or distress, but of pure terror. Definitely a woman screaming. The sound was originating offshore, coming from somewhere on the lake. I radioed in and had my new partner bring a patrol boat my way. She arrived and I hopped in, telling her the direction from which I last heard the scream. The sky was starless, overcast and pitch black. We swiveled our searchlight across the water, searching for the source of the screaming. The search went on for hours, and we were about to give up when our lights caught a glimpse of something. Not something. Someone. Maybe. I can't even be sure now, because they weren't on a boat, they weren't swimming or floating in the water. This thing, this person, was hovering above the water. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would have never believed it. Their back was turned to us, and they were shrouded in some sort of long, dark cloak. They hovered there. Their feet was few inches above the water as my partner and I froze on that spot. The thing slowly began to turn, rotating towards us. I'll admit it, I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see. My partner later told me she did the same. All we know is that a few seconds after closing our eyes, we heard the scream again, and this time it sounded like a baby screaming. I panicked and fumbled for the motor and blindly directed our boat anywhere that wasn't where we were. I opened my eyes and dared, for a split of a second, to glance back. The thing was still there. I could tell even without the light. Then, I swear, it waved at me. My partner and I didn't talk about it on the way back to the station. In fact, we never spoke about it. September 28, 2013. I was on the overnight shift. I hadn't been on the water since the last time, but I was alone in the station and I knew it was my duty to go out if I got a call. Sure enough, I got an anonymous report of a capsized boat near the south edge of the lake. Someone had been driving on the lakeshore road and spotted it offshore. I took a patrol boat out to the location given and spotted the overturned vessel pretty easily. Her belly was exposed and I knew I was going to have to go under and check for survivors. I geared up and dove into the pitch black waters, with my patrol boat lights barely able to penetrate the darkness. Visibility was low, something had churned up the slit and mud on the bottom. The boat was small and it didn't take me long to search it. I found a body tucked away in one of the closets. I didn't recognize him, but I wasn't sure anybody would have. His legs had been wrenched up so that his body was essentially folded in on itself. I will never forget the image of his feet near his head, his toes pointing behind him. His face was contorted into something inhuman. His gaunt cheeks were stretched out and his eyes were almost bulging out of their sockets. Like he had died in the middle of a most terrifying scream. I turned around and began to ascend when I saw another body floating below my boat. At least I thought they were floating. And then it wasn't a body. It was actually a person walking on the bottom. But they didn't have any gear on, no vest, no snorkel, nothing. And they weren't exactly walking. This person was, for lack of a better term, dancing, kicking their heels out. I started to swim towards them, but at that moment, my light died. I was cast into almost complete darkness. My boat lights on the surface was my only source of illumination. I ascended quickly, momentarily forgetting about the person on the bottom in my panic. But I just know that I heard something before I broke onto the surface. I'm pretty sure it was someone singing.